Hello and welcome back to the Relationship School's Smart Couple Podcast. I'm your host, Jayson Gaddis, and you're not. Remember that line from Chevy Chase many years ago for you old schoolers, Saturday Night Live? Anyway, some of you will get that reference. Anyway, I am just honored to be here to bend your ear for a while with this crazy technology we have. You can listen to me while you're commuting, running, walking, exercising, or hanging out and learn at the same time. It's pretty incredible. Okay, this podcast is about growing and developing yourself through the vehicle of partnership, long-term relationship. And it's also helpful for your friendships and your family relationships, your work relationships. So even though the context of this is long-term partnership, because that's the hardest relationship, once you start to figure that out, you can do any relationship well. You become the most mature person in the room that can handle the conflict, handle the upset, and can listen to someone until they feel understood. So it's an incredibly empowering feeling when you learn this stuff around intimacy and connection. All right, let's dive in. In this episode, I've got my wife and I chatting about our top takeaways from the Interpersonal Neurobiology Conference. Now, we realize this is going to be appealing to some of you and not all of you. So we're taking that risk here, as we often do. We will interview someone that you don't relate to, you don't resonate with. And then the next week, you'll relate and resonate with someone. So we understand we're not trying to do every episode for every single person, all right? Which is why we've occasionally done single episodes for singles. We've talked about divorce on here. And we do sexuality episodes, we do episodes for men, episodes for women. So in this episode, it's for the geeks, the nerds that want to understand the brain science behind connection and human wellness and relationship. So Ellen and I went to the Interpersonal Neurobiology Conference hosted by Dan Siegel of the Mindsight Institute and UCLA. And there were some amazing speakers there, from Tatkin to Dan Siegel to Esther Perel and other big names. And we wanted to hear from the best in the field that have been doing this a long, long time. They're elders, true elders that study human relationships for life. That's like their jam, like Ellen and I. So they're mentors to us, and we wanted to interview them. So we're just going to dive right in. And this is us breaking down the takeaways, the top takeaways from the conference, okay? And I think you're going to enjoy this and get a lot out of it for the nerds of you, all right? Without further ado, let's do this. All right, hello everybody. Ellen and I wanted to talk about our experience at the Interpersonal Neurobiology Conference, which, just to give a little context, is mostly for therapists. Yeah. That was who was mostly there. And it's a group of, it's an organization really led by Dan Siegel, his conference at UCLA, California.
Yeah, his organization, the Mindsight Institute, I believe.
Yeah, right, that's the organization. Interpersonal neurobiology is the term he coined to encapsulate sort of well-being, a conciliant view of well-being in humans. And Ellen and I wanted to go because this is the stuff we're geeked out on.
Yeah.
And we love Dan Siegel, and Stan Tatkin was there, who Ellen studies with.
Yeah.
And we just had a lot of other people that we were psyched to learn from, because the whole conference was about relationships.
Yeah.
Across the lifespan and how they impact our health and wellness and fulfillment.
Yeah.
So
it was great.
Yeah, it was great. And now we're home reflecting on our experience, and we have some takeaways.
We do. We'd like to share them.
Yeah. So we're just going to go in order of the speakers, basically, and give you one or two nuggets from each person.
Yeah.
In hopes that this serves you in some way.
Yes.
All right. Should we start with Antonio?
Yeah.
So Antonio Damasio is a neuroscientist. Basically studies the brain and consciousness.
Yeah.
And thinking, feeling, emotions.
Yeah, and he's the author of several really pivotal books in the field of understanding humans and emotions and affect. Yeah. And our brains.
So it was really interesting to hear a scientist basically talk to a bunch of therapists.
Yeah.
Who's not a clinician, as they say, doesn't work directly with clients, but has a lot of things to say and share. And that's why I love Dan Siegel, because Dan Siegel brings in a lot of different ologies to the table, different sciences and different practices to reach a more robust view of the human condition.
Yeah, so this conference was definitely a reflection of Dan's approach.
Yeah, including a neuroscientist. So Antonio, one of the things that I took down from what he said was that feelings are brokers.
Oh.
I don't know if you caught that one. It was really good. And then I added, helping us seek pleasure and avoid pain. Like, feelings are brokers, meaning they're like brokering deals to help us feel, in my understanding of this, more integrated as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he was definitely pointing to that. I mean, he shared a lot about, studies on bacteria and single cell organisms and the ways we're similar to them.
Yeah.
And he also really wanted us to walk away understanding that emotions are action, feelings are experience. So when we're talking about emotions and feelings, we often interchange those two words. And he really feels like it's important to distinguish between the two, that emotions are the action that happens physiologically in our body. And then feelings...
And you think of emotion, it moves.
Yeah, it moves. Something starts
in
moving inside of you. Mm-hmm. And then it starts in the brain and eventually includes the whole mind and our whole body. Mm-hmm. And feelings are the mental story we put on our emotions. So they're the labels we have for our emotions and the way we experience our emotions.
Yeah.
So I thought that was helpful, just especially as someone who works with people, to sort of know there's quite a lot that goes into how we feel and how we experience that, and then the language we use to describe that.
Yeah. Now, does this really impact your relationship life? Probably not. It's probably okay for you to be not distinguishing between feeling and emotion. In the relationship school, we go a little deeper on this, and we do distinguish the difference. And this is a new addition for me that I'm going to teach, that Ellen just shared. And for the layperson just trying to have a better marriage, it's not that big of a deal.
Right. It helps us, the ones of us who really want to understand humans in a very, as clearly as we can, this starts to matter.
Yeah, that's right. Should we move on to Dan?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you got for Dan?
Dan Siegel. Got a few pages to get through here, many pages from Antonio.
Yeah.
But something I mean, Dan is always full of really beautiful information. I love how he talks about integration. I'm kind of obsessed with the idea of integration as a human being, how to integrate all the different aspects of ourselves and our experience into our whole being. And he talks about integration as optimizing self-organization, linking differentiated parts, and it also correlates to our awareness. So the more we can integrate these different aspects and experiences in ourselves, the more aware we can be as an individual. I love how he talks about it. He can go on and on about integration.
Yeah, and the more aware we are, the more choices we have in life. We don't feel like our life is happening to us. We feel like we're in the driver's seat maybe more.
Yeah. I also wanted to say one more thing that I liked. Dan teaches mind training for how to invite people to transform their minds. And his research on this is showing that mind training can alter epigenetics to decrease inflammation and to improve the molecules of our body that help us produce homeostasis. This drive we have within us to keep replenishing and moving forward with our lives.
Yeah. So I interviewed Dan after the conference, and he went deeper into that. So listener, if you want to geek out on brain science and the mind, listen to that interview coming up, and go back to listen to 158, I think it is, with Dan. So one of the things I liked that he said is the mental health field, and that's people who are therapists, psychiatrists, maybe coaches, can't define mental and can't define health. And so one of Dan's missions is really to define what mental means and where is the mind.
Yeah.
And so he spent time, as he often does, and as he did in my first interview with him, exploring the mind and what is the mind. And you might think that's sort of a sciencey question, but it really does matter when it comes down to understanding, like Ellen's saying, a deeper level of how humanity works, how we interact with one another. The mind becomes really important, especially in relationship to healing, because a lot of people associate the mind with the brain, and it's not the same thing. Yeah. So he talks, this is for therapists really, this one. He talks about everything in the DSM. The DSM is a diagnostic statistical manual to label people with disorders: bipolar disorder, depression, OCD, ADHD. And therapists are trained to use that manual, and psychiatrists to sort of label people to get help, to try to help them. And it's a pretty limited model, but he says that basically everything in that manual is a lack of integration. It's either a person's either going into what he calls chaos or rigidity. And again, very simple, pretty cool map on understanding how people work, that we're really striving toward integration. And any illness or symptom is usually chaos or rigidity, where you're maybe disorganized or you're bracing. And again, we can get deeper into that another time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I thought that was really cool, and I just always love how he talks about that.
Yeah, I like how he orients around our minds and how they work and what helps them work well and work on our behalf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so stay tuned for the Dan Siegel interview coming up in an episode or two.
And the mind is fully embodied. If we're talking about Dan, we got to always say that.
It's an embodied mind, that's right.
The mind is embodied. It's not just up here. It's it's moving through this whole system.
Relational also.
Yes.
Which is really cool.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to Harville and Helen.
Hendricks and Helen Hunt, yes.
Yeah, so these two wrote Getting the Love You Want many, many years ago. It's a classic in the relationship book category. And it was really fun to hear them talk. So I'm curious what you got.
Yeah, I mean, they're elders in this field. They've been doing this. They've been working with couples and relationships for 30, 40 years. Yeah. I mean, I was really inspired by them, and just the work they're doing now, the way they're trying to get their safe conversations work into and a lot of people's hands, people who wouldn't normally go to therapy, they're trying to reach just really anyone and make better communication more accessible to everybody. So I appreciate what they're up to. And I had a few things that stuck out to me. Do you want to say anything first?
Sure. Well, what you're talking about in terms of this thing that helping so many people, they've got this term called safe conversation. It's really applying it to any system or organization. So they take the view that if you can help the couple and you got a healthy, strong couple, then you've got a strong family. And the couple is the center of the family. Yeah. And then they go down off that. And if you got a healthy family, then you have a healthy neighborhood, a healthy school, a strong community, a strong village, a strong city eventually. And they started doing this in Dallas, Texas, and it was really neat. They had a couple highlight reels of how many thousands and actually millions of people they've impacted with their safe conversations model. And it's really just a model on how to listen to someone. That's what's so cool is they're the people that came up with the term imago. If you've ever heard the term imago therapy, and it's neat how they're taking one slice of the imago model on how to have a safe conversation with someone. And it's really reflecting back what you heard and asking, is there more, until the person,
making sure both people
safe and
feel
understood.
Safe and understood.
Yeah.
Yeah. How to get through something hard, a topic that might be difficult to talk about in a way that gets you somewhere. Yeah. More connected, more understanding.
Totally. So I was really blown away because the relationship school, we want to do something similar around love relationships specifically. And so I would, we'll include in the show notes just this link to the safe conversation stuff. Yeah. And then I liked Harville at one point, or maybe it was Helen said, connection is not something we do, it's who we are.
Yeah, I have that written down too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of little things like that written down. Like ruptured connecting is the source of all suffering. I thought that was interesting to think about.
Yeah.
And just the big consequences of an unrepaired rupture in a relationship. It creates anxiety, in us. We start to get self-absorbed and lose sense of the other person. We lose empathy, and we eventually, can go into, just seeing others as objects who satisfy our needs or something. Like it can really disrupt how we experience relationships in general, and how we utilize them and how we care for others. So appreciated some of the things they spoke to about that. They also said that listening has an accuracy of 13%.
Yeah, this is studies on listening.
Studies on listening. So it is so important. I love that you teach that too. Like you teach a lot of skills around listening and reflecting and making sure you understand each other. And we really need to put more attention and more of our presence behind that, because left to our own devices, we're only getting things right 13% of the time, which is pretty bad. That's
pretty pathetic, right? Yeah. If you think about, and then under stress, we're even worse.
Totally.
So if you think about your own marriage or partnership or family constellation, try it on that you're not as accurate as you think in terms of your ability to listen to someone, which is why I coined this term, listening until someone feels understood. That's kind of the litmus test. Can you actually do that?
They also said something about safety. I know we've talked about that, around Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory and the importance of feeling safe so that we can be our full selves in the world and in our relationships. And they also spoke to that too. Safety is the essential condition for recovering and reconnecting and experiencing aliveness.
Yeah.
So, physiologically, we know that that's true. And, they're speaking to that as well here. And,
Yeah, we also know that now, because of the research, that kids learn best when they feel safe.
Yeah.
So imagine kids in a home where the parents are arguing all the time and not actually getting to completion, the unrest that is involved in that and the lack of safety that's day after day, year after year, that adds up. And a lot of us might have grown up in homes like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Who's next?
We can come back to the panel at the end.
Let's do the panel at the end. So Stan, maybe?
Sure. What have I written down about Stan?
Okay, so your teacher, Stan, who was amazing.
Yes. Yeah. I love what Stan presents, and he did a really thorough job, I think, of talking about secure functioning, which is really at the heart of his work, is how to help adults have secure functioning relationships.
Speaking of safety.
Yeah. And he, there's a lot that he spoke to about that, about how to make that happen and why it's important. One of the first ones being that when mutual dysregulation in a couple is one of the biggest predictors of relationship failure. So when our nervous systems aren't getting along too often for too much time, that has tremendous wear and tear on the relationship, and it's actually gets harder and harder to recover a relationship where that's been going on too much too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I liked him drilling home implicit memory and talking about how we remember stuff, and the more, quote, bad memories you have of a partner or your experience, if we don't deal with it quickly, it goes into then it goes into long-term memory.
Yeah, and it's not just that we remember stuff, but we really remember the emotionally impactful things and negatively experienced things, like negative emotions, like which would be categorized like fear or anger, hurt, things like that. We really remember because it's a survival function in our brains to remember the things that felt the most threatening.
Right, because we don't want them to happen again.
Right. So if that's happening here, and we're not repairing that and resolving it, those memories go into long-term memory, and then I'm building up memory that you're threatening and someone it's not safe to be around and all the stuff that's really, that then if you just do something small, I have all that implicit memory in me that I'm reacting from now.
Yeah, and so my understanding of Stan's work is helping people from a bottom-up approach learn how to not be so threatening to each other.
Yeah, that's part of it.
That's part of it. And how to establish a secure, functioning connection through more adult attachment
Yeah.
Practices, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I wrote this down, but I know some of the hallmarks of secure functioning is that there's interdependency based on a mutual desire to survive and thrive. That we cooperate, collaborate, that the system is fair and sensitive to both of us.
Yeah.
That there's shared principles of how we do things. So we have like shared agreements and principles of how we govern ourselves by, how we behave, and do things together. That we repair quickly.
Yeah, that's a big one we've talked about in the podcast before.
Yeah.
Repairing quickly.
Yeah.
And we go deeper into these, by the way, this whole list in the Deep Psychology of Intimate Relationships classes. You know, if you want a deeper dive on that, obviously you sign up for one of our trainings.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful. Ellen, you'll be teaching some of this stuff at our graduation weekend.
Yeah, some things about attachment.
Just a little bit about attachment. Security.
And I also like that he also adds, being an adult. Like that functioning in a secure way is a very mature, complex model of being. It's a very adult, differentiated way of being together. And that through the process of creating more security, we actually grow ourselves up in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool.
Super cool. Ellen Boeder and her husband Pete did some cool stuff. And I'm going to talk about, I did a whole interview with Ellen, so I'm going to refrain from sharing too much about that. But I will say that she had some really great frames about how couples can talk to each other, and also she challenged me around some of the stuff I advocate around needs, which was really cool. It's going to help me orient a little bit around how I teach about needs. And I thought that was cool. So that's coming up. Stay tuned for that interview.
Yeah. And she has, her name sounds exactly the same as mine.
Yeah,
We're
Ellen
not
Boeder.
The same people.
Totally.
She's wonderful.
It was the first time you'd met each other and had never met someone with the same name.
Yeah, we took selfies.
Different spelling.
We took pictures.
Right.
It was a
very
cool
cute.
moment.
Yes.
But her husband, who was also a therapist, spoke as well. And he, I thought he had he had a lot of great stuff for therapists and for how to, just different perspectives on how to work with couples. But he also had for couples, he had 2 skills for change and an attitude that he thought was essential for developing as a couple. And the 2 skills are being able to have impulse control and a forward focus. So knowing kind of where you're going, how you want to be, and letting that be important enough to you to move towards that. And then the attitude he talked about was similar to this, but it's a bigger picture of knowing why you would do the difficult work of, growing and developing in your relationship, like really having a personal understanding that you're actually invested in for why would you do this? Why would you, try to tolerate these difficult things or change these patterns that are hard to change, and maybe not be sure how it's going to go for you, but people really knowing what their own investment is in it seems really important.
Yeah, and he had an awesome download about if you're a couples therapist and you're working with a couple and they come into your office, rather than ask, so what do you guys want help with? Which typically people just come in and go, well, he or she, and they, we just tend to blame each other and have a lot of complaints stored up, and we can't wait to unload to this objective, listener.
Right.
But rather than do that, he had this whole approach, and the basic approach is to start with one person and say, if you were to guess what she thinks you need to work on, because you've been listening to her, right? What do you think she would say?
Yeah, what are her complaints
What are her complaints of you? And let's see how well you're listening. And then we're going to check it out with her to see how well you did. And then to do that with the other partner, I thought was brilliant in terms of because that way we're trying to, ultimately we want people to take responsibility and not point the finger at the partner for being the problem. And so Pete, I thought, did a splendid job of helping clinicians and therapists and coaches do that.
Yeah, get out
really
of the
cool.
triangle with their couples. Yeah, Peter Pearson.
Peterson, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then Esther Perel.
Yes, she spoke as well.
Who many of you have probably heard about by now. She's making a splash out there with her book on the state of affairs.
And also meaning in captivity.
Yeah. And it's a really good book, by the way. It's really helping me understand affairs more deeply. And that was her whole talk. She spoke about affairs, and do you want to say a couple things about it, and I'll add on? I mean, there's a lot in this one.
There's a lot in this one.
It's really good.
And, something I like about Esther is how she really is good at highlighting, like, the double binds we're in, in our society, as couples, as human beings. We want this, we don't want that, so where are we left? Like, she's just great at putting words to the paradoxes that we're in when it comes to marriage and relationship right now. She did a great job of sort of walking us through how the current, like the modern view of marriage has become just really heavy with expectations and pressures.
Yeah, because your partner has to be all things.
Yeah, it has to be like a village, a family, a church, friends, community.
My confidant, my lover.
Like, our partners are now all these things that used to be sourced in many different areas of our lives, spiritual soulmate, and my business partner, and my co-parent, and my best friend, and
And she referenced that guy Eli Finkel, who's spoke to this too, like in his research.
Yes. That
basically the partner has become almost too much, and it's just a lot of pressure to put on one person.
It's a lot. And then the idea that, I wrote this down, that the survival of the family now depends entirely on the happiness of the couple. Like, it used to not, that wasn't why people stayed married, whether they were happy together or not. It used to be a lot of other more practical kinds of reasons. And now we have these, like, lofty
self-actualization,
dreams,
fulfillment
that we want here. And if it was hey, I'm not happy here, I'm just going to go. So really, there's so much pressure now to be happy as a couple, so that the family stays intact.
Yeah.
And she just did great about kind of explaining all of that.
Yeah.
And do you want to dive into some of the other stuff?
Yeah, I thought one of her coolest findings with all the couple work she's done for so many years now was the surprising finding is that people stray and, like, have affairs and cheat and withhold, and not because they're wanting a new person, but because they're wanting to feel new in themselves.
Yes.
They're tired of themselves.
Yeah.
And so they're seeking, like, a new feeling inside of themselves, a new aliveness, and a new sexy person provides that temporarily. And that feels really good because they've felt sort of dead in this relationship with this other person. They've become kind of a shell of themselves. Mm-hmm. So that was neat to hear that from her.
Yeah, she
talks about that in the book too.
She does. She has, she's looking at affairs from a lot of different angles.
Yeah.
But why even happy couples have affairs too.
Yeah.
She didn't totally unpack that, but.
Yeah, and the other thing I love that she does is she's very balanced. She's not, people sort of seem to have some charge with her because she's condoning affairs or, like, not supporting the victim enough
or whatever.
And she's like, no, I just want people to be honest here and be themselves, and I don't care actually whether someone stays together or not, or she just wants people to be honest with each other.
Yeah.
And
to talk about these things that are complex
and just talk
difficult
openly.
And hard to land.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she talked about how to repair through affairs.
Yeah.
That was great. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I thought was really enlightening for me as a man, just as a white privileged male, that I sort of got the light shed on was when the power balance is equal, we're more likely to disclose secrets. But because women are still in 9 countries in the world, can be stoned and killed for having an affair.
For even seeming like they're having one.
Yeah, the stakes are a lot higher for a woman.
Yes.
And the balance of power is off for obvious reasons. Once you sort of see that, it's like, oh.
Right.
And that was really helpful for me to see.
Right, and that was really cool how she went into that, how it looks like, the statistics, or it looks like men have affairs more, but she's like, what if the consequences weren't so dire for women? You know, they might have affairs more, or women hide them so much better because the consequences of being found are so much higher.
Yeah.
And so we really don't have a level, we don't really know what it would look like if the repercussions of having an affair were the same for both genders or all the genders, you know? So that felt important to acknowledge.
So important. Yeah. She also mentioned the new shame is if you have an affair and you stay.
Yeah. Right.
That's kind of the new shame. And I thought that she writes about that in the book. And again, it makes sense because so much of conventional advice is if someone cheats on you, how dare them, and why don't you leave them now?
Right, you can leave now. You can leave. Yeah, you can leave. What's your problem? Everyone can leave. Everyone can get divorced.
And people don't understand the complexity of what's tied into that.
Right.
And how actually a lot of people want to work it out and work through it because there's a lot at stake. And also they want to repair, and this is their person they fell in love with. And
there's an opportunity to recreate the relationship there.
Yeah.
That she definitely supports as well. So.
Yeah, there's a lot in this one.
So much in that one. Yeah.
So hoping to interview her at some point.
Yes.
For all those listeners, know that I'm trying.
Yes.
Okay, should we just end on the couples panel?
Yeah, let's talk about them.
They also did a couples panel both days. They did kind of like a therapist panel the second day, and on the first day they just had a lot of the married couples who are also relationship teachers or couples therapists or brain nerds get up there and just talk about what's working in their marriage, what has worked after, because most of those couples have been married over 20, 30 years.
Yeah, and most of them work together.
And a lot of them work together. Yeah. And not all of them are therapists, so that should be noted that there were a couple people that they have no therapy background at all. They're just a partner that's got their own profession. And yeah, my big takeaway from their everything they shared was play, which we talked about.
Yeah.
Just how much fun, how important it is to have fun with your partner.
Yeah.
Your life partner. That, I here on The Smart Couple, I talk a lot about work. It's work. And you got to work on it. And a lot of people are like, yeah, but when do I get to have a good time? And it's like, well, we want to infuse it also with having fun. And if we can't laugh together through our foibles and our mistakes and our triggers, then yeah, we probably do have bigger problems.
Right.
So play was a big message they shared.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I wrote things down from each of them. I loved hearing them speak to their own journey a little bit as a couple, just even in how they frame things so that it feels good to both of them. I really felt like they have so much wisdom to offer.
Yeah.
Things like one person, it's important that one person maintains good cerebral functioning when someone else is going down and under stress or, struggling. Yeah. Like, optimally we have one person that can sort of lead the way.
Yeah.
Another couple, I think it was Helen and Harville, actually talked about at a certain point in their marriage when they were really struggling actually and considering divorce at one point, as they were recovering from that, they decided to go zero negative, which meant like they ended any put downs, any offhand comments, any facial expressions, any complaining, any facial, verbal, gesture, energetic things that would convey something negative to their partner.
Yeah.
They like went totally abstinent there.
Yep, took it out.
Yeah. And they started doing affirmations regularly of each other. So they really...
They're big on habits.
Yeah.
So even if you aren't feeling it, to still give a daily affirmation, because that grows over time.
Yeah.
And that's where your attention starts to go. They also said, just a simple one, invite, don't expect. Invite your partner, don't expect them.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah, invite, don't expect. I have that written down too. That's cool. That was Caroline and Dan, I think. Envisioning an inspiring future together, that was important to Ellen and Peter mentioned that. Staying, I think to me, that means like staying true to myself and what I envision for my life and my future, and getting a shared reality around like, what can we do together? And whenever we do that, it's like, it's such a much bigger future than I would picture for just me. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah.
It really, we can go so much further and do so much more in our lives.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yep. Stan and Tracy, I liked, they said something to the effect of, all about collaboration, cooperation, service to each other, respecting each other, and growing up together.
Yeah.
That they are growing up together, and that's the view they take. And Stan said something about, I'm okay because I'm with you.
Yeah.
That, no life's hard and whatever happens, it's okay because I'm with you. I thought that was a powerful statement of their connection.
Totally.
Another takeaway from the panel was, I think it was Marion and what was the guy's name? Matt, who was like a financial analyst for like 30 years.
And then he got a PhD
in psychology or something.
Marion Solomon's husband, she's an author and researcher and a psychologist at UCLA.
Right. I think it was them that said, it's really about supporting the person in being who they are and who they want to be, not trying to get them to be someone I want them to be.
Right.
And that's maybe cliche, but it's how often do we try to change each other in a long-term relationship? So it really is about like, how can I support you being yourself and doing what you care most about, even if it's something I don't like to do or don't care about.
Right. Yeah, you do. As you say that too, I think of parenting, just that as a parent, that's what I aspire to do for our kids, and there's a way that definitely translates into, partners, that how could I have that same attitude to just helping you be fully yourself? And it's not so much about me and how I want you to be or what I would like the best for you.
Right. You sure, honey, even if I give our kids a download that you don't approve of?
Yes. Yeah, we'll work it out.
Yeah, cool. So those were our top maybe 10 or 20, maybe, I don't know, takeaways from the Interpersonal Neurobiology Conference 2018 at UCLA. It was fun to share that with you guys, and hopefully it serves some of you in some way.
Yeah.
And we'll do this again maybe next year if we go, or I think it's important you got to understand, this is like Dan Siegel's on the leading edge of neuroscience and psychology. And so he's changing the field. That.
Yeah. It was evolving at the conference. There were breakthroughs in the field at the conference. So,
and he'll talk about that on my interview with him. It was pretty extraordinary. Yeah. So. Okay, thanks for hanging, Ellen.
Yeah,
it was fun to hang with you.
Nice to be here.
California too.
Yes.
Okay, relationship nerds, how was that? I'm so curious if any of that was useful for you, because it was useful for us. And granted, this interview was geared more toward therapists, coaches, and people that want to geek out a little bit on neuroscience and how we work with couples and how we work with our own minds and hearts. So, just curious. One action step you can take right now is to write down, out of this, everything we just shared with all these different relationship teachers, what is the one thing that you want to explore more about? What's the one thing that stood out that you want to write down right now? Just write it down and then make a commitment. I want to explore that. I want to learn more about that. Whether it's buying one of their books or sending an email to us and asking us a question to go further in a future podcast. What's the action step you're going to take to learn more about it? Okay. And then if you are a therapist and you want to learn how to work with people more effectively, or if you're a relationship coach, or if you're just a helper of some kind, I think you should go watch my free web class at my old website, my personal website, jasongaddis.com/coaches. And that website there, that link will take you to a free class you can watch to explore more about how to help other people with their relationship issues in half the time and just more effectively. All right, so check that out. And as always, join our Smart Couple Facebook group. We've got about 5,000 people in there now, and it's a pretty thriving community of people that like this conversation and are fans of the podcast, followers. You can ask questions in there and get responses. We're going to be inserting some of our relationship coaches in there to help you with some of your questions if you come there. All right. And it's totally free. Okay. Just go to your Facebook search bar and type Smart Couple Group and you'll find us. All right. Okay, folks, have a beautiful rest of your day, morning, evening, and we'll talk soon.